Dear students, welcome to the video session on crisis and trauma counseling. In this session, we are going to understand the definitions of crisis and trauma and their symptoms and stages of crisis. When tsunami struck India in 2004, it devastated not only the properties but many lives as well. I met Ponni, 30 years old, from a fishing hamlet near Kadalur, Tamil Nadu, India, in a relief camp. She was looking quiet and calm, sitting in a corner holding her sari pallu in her hand tightly. Her husband was standing nearby, looking sad with red-rimmed eyes. When I tried to speak with her, she gave monosyllable answers, either yes or no. After several sittings with her, she broke her silence and told her story. The story goes like this. On the day of the disaster, she was sitting outside her home, a fishing hamlet of 15 to 20 huts close to the sea, preparing food for her family. That morning, her husband had gone to sell the previous day's catch, and her two little boys, aged 5 and 2, were playing outside. She heard a roar. That is how she described the sound of the tsunami waves. She thought something fell down somewhere, came running out of the hut to look. Then she realized it was a huge wave rising above the sea level up to 2-story levels. She called for her children, took hold of them and ran for shelter. She reached a nearby farm, not far from the sea, climbed on top of a small tree holding her younger boy in her hand. She helped her elder boy to climb and sit on a branch. The wave reached the farm with full force and shook the tree like a cardboard. In the moment of panic to save both her boys, Ponni told her elder one that if the wave shakes the tree and if it is difficult to hold on, then he should jump into the water and swim towards the land. She was confident that her elder boy, coming from a fisherman family, would be able to swim without any difficulty. Simultaneously, she did the same, holding a 2-year-old boy in her hand. The next thing she remembered was waking up in a relief camp. She has lost both her children for the waves. Her husband found her after 2 days of search in several relief camps. Since then, she was looking quiet and calm like the sea after the tsunami. The day she told the story, she was wailing loudly and uncontrollably, saying, "I should not live. I must die. I don't deserve to be alive, as I am the killer of my boys." She was blaming herself for the death of her boys. She used to sit in the corner of the relief camp for hours together, holding her donated sari pallu as she tried to make sense of what has happened. She was overwhelmed and unclear about the direction her life would take in the following days and months. She displayed complete hopelessness and helplessness. With slow and steady encouragement, both Ponni and her husband agreed to attend counselling, although they did not have much confidence that it would help. This is an example of how crisis and trauma affect individuals and the reactions to such incidents. Now, in the current world, many such incidents you will be coming across as a therapist. Hence, this session on crisis and trauma counseling is an attempt to help you learn it. Here, we are going to discuss about effective principles and guidelines in crisis and trauma interventions. Let us look into the definitions of crisis and trauma. What is crisis? Kaplan in 1964 initially defined a crisis as occurring when individuals are confronted with problems that cannot be solved. These irresolvable issues result in an increase in tension, signs of anxiety, a subsequent state of emotional unrest, and an inability to function for extended periods. James and Gilliland in 2005 define crisis as events or situations perceived as intolerable, difficult, that exceed an individual's available resources and coping mechanisms. Another definition by Roberts in 2000, he says crisis as a period of psychological disequilibrium experienced as a result of an hazardous event or situation that constitutes a significant problem that cannot be remedied by using familiar coping strategies. Having seen the definitions on crisis, let us look into some of the examples of crisis. They are an accident, automobile or in home, death or loss of loved one, natural disaster, physical illness like cancer to self or significant others, divorce or separation, unemployment or loss of a job, financial difficulties. These are some of the examples. Here, we need to understand the subtle difference between crisis and trauma. A crisis is distinguished from trauma by timing and by how quickly it resolved. Most crises develop into traumas, and most traumas begin as crises. Why do we learn crisis and trauma counseling separately? If you are trained as a counselor, couldn't we do crisis trauma counseling as well? If these questions are coming to your mind, then the answer is as follows. In the past 2 decades, crisis and trauma interventions surged as a specialized field. The focus on this field began with the rise in violence and increase in natural disasters. A basic requirement for becoming a therapist is inner motivation to help and care for others. This altruistic motivation is not enough. Appropriate training will help the therapist to become an asset, not hindrance, to individuals or community in crisis. That appropriate training comes with a detailed understanding of stages in crisis and trauma intervention models and guidelines for providing it. The stages have been described by Kaplan in 1961. First stage is an initial rise in tension occurs in response to an event. Second is increased tension disrupts daily living. Third is unresolved tension results in depression. Fourth is failure to resolve the crisis may result in a psychological breakdown. Dear students, I would like to conclude this session with a take-home message. Attending to crisis reactions immediately prevents individuals from developing into serious psychological problems. Thank you.